Inside Our Mind. Good to be back in the studio. I've been in Australia on quite a bit of an extended journey down there. I thought today we might talk a little bit about animals, and we'll do a little food preparation. And you know, the show, The Universe Inside Our Mind, is all about how the world is inside self, and that we perceive everything through our senses, and that our senses, you know, our brain makes things up from the inside out, and so that these things that we're viewing here on the outside and you viewing me is being made up inside the brain. You know, I've been in Tasmania. Do you know where Tasmania is? Perhaps you've heard of the Tasmanian devil. But anyway, if you could just watch my hands here now in the air a little bit. Can we see that? Yeah. You can see Australia I'm drawing Australia, so you can see Australia like that, and New Zealand is there, and Tasmania is down here, and my family own a group of islands in between the mainland of Australia and Tasmania, and that's where I've been the last little while. And Falcon's in the studio here, and I just wonder if you would bring up that photo for us here. Thank you. Can we get a nice close-in shot of this? That's a really beautiful shot of part of the island, and it's got the cleanest air in the world. There's a Bureau of Meteorology and Weather there at Gable Island in Bass Strait, and that reports the cleanest air in the world. So that's really very amazing. But one other beautiful thing about being in this wilderness area was having the opportunity to be in nature and to really see wildlife. And of course in Australia the wallabies, which are like a kangaroo, and wombats were such a little bit like a small bear or a badger or something. We had an enormous amount of wildlife around us there where we were, and it was very interesting that other places in Australia that I went to, Victoria, one of the states of Australia, where a lot of farming and farmland is, you don't see much wildlife. You don't really see much wallabies or anything like this. And certainly people in the suburbs hardly see any wildlife at all. So it is amazing that you really have to travel into more of the wilderness areas now today to actually see wildlife and everything. One of the things that I do, and I do it on a regular basis, which perhaps we can get a shot of this, I love to go horse riding. Can we get a close-up of this? Yeah. Oops, there we go. So I do horse riding quite a bit. Horses are really very amazing. I love to get out into the country, and it is amazing actually how programs where they're really working with teaching disabled kids and autistic kids and things, how amazing it is working with the big animals and that, like horses, of course dolphins and whales and things, cause people really to be much more sort of in the present. Horses are really amazing though, and how do you know you have rapport with a horse? You know how you have rapport with a horse? Of course, you could have like perhaps 12 or 20 horses in a paddock, and you're going to select a horse to ride. You might be looking around, and that horse, which lowers its head to you a little bit like this, is becoming in rapport with you and sort of submitting itself to you. So it's really amazing. You stay very alert and you really look to see what's going on and everything. And you'll notice on one, the horse sort of lowers its head a little bit. That's it's submitting itself to you. And the very first thing, because horses are creatures of habit, and animals very much are creatures of habit. And so everything sort of has to fit into the habit, you know, and as things fit into the habit, things work well. And so when you're catching a horse, what do? I mean, typically the very first thing, of course, is you notice the horse has lowered its head a little bit like this. You approach the horse and you might perhaps give it something to eat a little bit. That's always a really great idea to make friends. And then what you do is you'll put a rein over the horse's neck, which is like a leather from the rein that you're going to sort of, a bridle that goes into the horse's mouth, and there's reins for steering the horse. You just throw a rein over the horse's neck like this, moment onward, the horse acts as if it's been caught. And so then you go ahead and you'll saddle your horse up and that sort of thing. It is really amazing that the horses have personalities, and there's often like a pecking order. Not often, there really is a pecking order with the horses and things. And if one horse is wanting to get in front of another horse, but that horse isn't in the pecking order to get in front, the other horse will turn around and go, hey, what are you doing here, And there's little sort of signs and things that they talk to each other. And that horses really are very amazing, really teach you a lot about having a fortitude and will to say, well, we're going to go in this direction. And of course you can sense sometimes the horse is sensing where to go a little bit, and you're sensing where to go, and as you're riding, you sort of, there's a feeling of becoming one, like a meditative state really, where we're sort of completely sort of grounded and become one with the horse. So you notice a lot of little things, how the horse is on its feet, any changing pattern of, how the horse is on its feet can indicate little things, perhaps it's happened in its hooves and that. You're watching the horse's ears as you ride, and the expressions of the horse a little bit, because that's going to give you an indication of what's to come. Because certainly if the horse puts its ears back like this, really puts its ears back, sort of like this, it's an indication that something is really up, and that horse is really fairly spirited to hold on. Of course, then you're really riding with the horse. The horse is going to go up a very steep slope, and you really come very forward on your horse and get your weight over the shoulders more of the horse and grab hold of the mane and things. And then in other times, of course, the horse could be really in quite a gallop, and you're starting to slow down, and then you're wanting to lean back and put your feet really quite well forward, so that you can keep your center of balance on the horse and that. But anyway, it's so amazing actually being with animals and having the opportunity really to get out and to be in nature. And it's so precious for us to imagine the animals and to consider the animals and what we do in our life and how this affects the rest of the earth. We're going to do a food preparation segment right now. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about animals. I'd love to share a few stories with you about animals. Anyway, stay tuned to this cooking segment, and we'll be right back in a second.
Hi everybody, welcome to Universe Inside Our Mind. I'm here with Dr. David Jubb, and my name is Annie Jubb. And today we're going to make an outrageous live food sorbet for you. So this is good medicine for healing all kinds of ailments and just, having a yummy little treat when you get home from work today or wherever it is that you...
Sorbets are so wonderful. Annie's holding up some cherries. These are frozen cherries. So we'll go ahead, we'll put some frozen cherries in here. Cherries are amazing blood builders, really, really wonderful. Cherries are very good for diabetics. Ordinarily we would use, this is going to be a cherry mango sorbet. Ordinarily we would use mango that was frozen. So we're going to go ahead, we already have we've cut these and we've peeled them. And you can see they have little squares which we've cut. We'll just go ahead and take those off with a spoon.
So everybody knows the mango, right? The humble mango. And then you just cut off both sides like this and then quarter it. And that makes it really easy to open that little video. Mangoes are good medicine. There's lots of vitamin C in there. Nice one.
I think that's going to be good enough.
Okay.
That's probably good enough, I think.
Okay.
Let's put a little honey in here. Let's go ahead and put some honey in there.
Okay, this is an incredibly raw honey. It's
Okay, from Mammoth Mountain. This honey comes from all the way.
California.
I'm going to put a little bit of coconut butter in here as well. That was like a tablespoon.
Where are you getting coconut butter?
Coconut butter creams things. It's so wonderful. vitamin E and its ability to preserve our body. We're going to put a little Celtic sea salt or sun-dried sea salt in here. That sort of binds everything together really good. I just put a pinch in there. So put some spirulina in there.
Okay, so people might say, why are you putting salt in something that's sweet?
Because it helps bind the protein and the sugars and the fats together. It helps bind everything.
Very, very important.
And plus, it helps with the digestion.
Ah, there you go. This is a spirulina pacifica. It's a really nice spirulina. You can use blue-green algae as well. And I'm just going to go ahead and put in 6 little tablets. A lot of times it already comes flaked or powdered, and you just put in like a half a teaspoon, or however much you like. If you want it to be more of a stick to your ribs.
I'm going to put, because we're just making a tiny bit of sorbet here now, I'm going to put a quarter of a lemon in there.
And again, always when we use our lemons, we just take off the yellow off the outside, and we leave all the white inside. Bioflavonoids in there help us potentiate the vitamin C that we take in.
We're ready to blend this.
Okay, so really simple, right? Just a few ingredients, and this is a yummy treat. If you want something for the kids after school, or you want something yummy for yourself, sometimes we just have this for dinner. Sorbet for dinner. Okay, we've got all our ingredients, and let's go ahead and blend it up.
For the viewers at home, if you wanted to make this thicker, a little thicker than what we have done here, so you really would have to actually spoon it out. We could have frozen the berries.
Frozen the mango.
Frozen the mango. Yeah.
These cherries we just already bought frozen. You can get them in a lot of your health food stores. You can get them in most of the little delis and stuff that they have around here already frozen up for you. Wow, so do I get to taste it?
Absolutely.
It's a beautiful color.
Yeah, it's well tasty. Yeah?
Wow. It is so yummy. And so sweet and delicious. And so everything in here is completely alive. Everything in here has all of its enzymes, 100%, right?
Yeah.
Why are enzymes such a buzzword in life food nutrition?
Enzymes are so important because they do all of the work to break things down. And there's a law of adaptive secretion of enzymes. If we have to use enzymes to break food down, because there weren't any enzymes in the food because it was cooked out, that robs enzymes from our body, and that is the workforce. So it's like either we have a blueprint ability to be able to produce a certain amount of enzymes for our life, or otherwise we can abuse them up.
Right, so when we run out of enzymes, it's pretty much the process of aging, right? I mean, that's when the skin gets thin and wrinkles happen and all of this. So the more food that we eat that actually has enzymes in it, in fact, you can go for 100% live food nutrition. That's the total way to go. You can have all that enzyme and life force, actually the light inside of food that makes us bright, shine brighter as well, right? It brings the light up inside of us because we're eating food that has light in it.
Many people may have heard of raw food, and raw food might not be living because it could be in suspended animation, just like a grain. Then that grain, Anne Wigmore came along and she coined the term living food, and she sprouted the grain and it became a living food, although the grain doesn't have a life force because it won't grow itself in nature. So all life food is raw and is living, but not all living food has its life force, and not all raw food is living.
Right. So there's a distinction there in the enzyme community, we'll call it that. The enzyme life force inside of food. So I guess now we need to discuss a little bit about what
actually
food is
is really amazing actually that we put in this sorbet. We put a couple of things in the sorbet to help slow the release of the sugars and things down. Of course, all the sugars that we used in here are a sugar which is managed by the liver. We put a little coconut butter in this. That helps slow the release of the sugars down. We also put a little spirulina.
Okay, so we've added a fat and a protein. Fat and protein slow sugars down, or the release of sugar.
And that's really the very best thing for kids. It really helps manage their blood sugar and that sort of thing. If this, my goodness, the kids will just flip out over this sorbet. You make this at home for your kids, my God, they'll flip out over it.
Don't tell tell them that you didn't buy it in from a package at first, at least, and let them love it. And then you can tell them you just whipped it up in your Vitamix or your blender at home. Anything like that is really easy to put together. I mean, we made this in about 2-3 minutes, and this is the kind of simplicity that life food nutrition is. Some people might be like, oh, well, there's so much extra preparation time because then I just pull it out of the cardboard box and throw it in the microwave. Well, this is actually just very fast food. Would you say it's the fastest food?
It's the fastest food. Hardly takes any time for your kids to make it for your kids at home.
So another yummy little treat from the Life Food Nutrition Kitchen. This is Dr. David Jubb, and I'm Annie Jubb, and stay tuned because we'll be right back with the universe inside our mind.
Did you love that food prep? I'll bet you love that sorbet. That's such a good thing, that sorbet. It really helps enormously when food can be broken down a little bit like that. It's still got all of its life force there. Really doesn't require any energy really to be able to digest. You get an enormous amount of energy from this. It's really good for the environment. It's really great for animals. You know, the very first segment we talked about animals. It is so amazing because I know it's probably just a conservative estimate that 4 species of life become extinct on the Earth every day. Probably that's a very conservative estimate. Species extinction has accelerated 1,000% in the last 100 years. And you really could say, well, we certainly would say, and people studying this, it shows that our choice of food is probably one of the major behaviours that are really affecting the earth at the moment. And so we really encourage people to move more toward vegetarianism. The fish in the seas are being fished out, and it's such cruelty, the things that happen to the animals and that. And if you ever become aware, then my goodness, it's really amazing to move more toward vegetarianism. And it seems like the whole world will move more toward vegetarianism. I'd love to share with you a few stories of animals, you know, because ethnologists have been looking at animals and studying animals and wondering whether or not animals can communicate to each other or not. Well, it's very interesting because there were these fishermen sitting, you know, at the end of the day, you know, they'd done their day's work, more or less, had set the gear, and they were just sitting and socialising a little bit and resting. And all of a sudden they heard this bellowing sound. And they rushed up and looked over, and here's this walrus in the water with an orca whale ever coming closer and in a circle, tighter sort of circle. And of course the walrus was in fear of its life and was bellowing in fear of its life. And so the fishermen, of course, came up onto the deck to look at this, and they just watched sort of silently. They could see the orca whale was coming in closer and closer to this walrus. And just in this moment, quite a circle of dolphins appeared and swimming around the walrus, and they stayed around the walrus for some time until the orca whale disappeared. Some time passed by, and everyone again was sort of just sitting quietly. You know, they'd set the gear that day, and again they heard this bellowing again from this walrus. They rushed up onto the deck, they looked over here in the sea, and they see again the orca whale making an ever tighter circle, coming closer and closer to the walrus, and the walrus is bellowing for its life. And again, the fishermen saw these dolphins walrus for some time until the orca whale was gone. So it was very amazing for the people who witnessed this. It was like, oh my God. In my mind, I feel, godlikeness is where certainly one species reaches out to care for another species. And so that's very amazing, actually, that dolphins are sensitive in this way, and that other life forms also show great sort of sensitivity in this way. I did hear of a fellow whilst I was in Africa, off Cape Town, who had capsized at sea quite some distance off the coast and found himself in the water without a life raft and without a life vest, and treaded water most of the night, and then come the morning, in the wee hours of the morning, he had tread water all of that night to keep himself afloat. Finally, just from exhaustion, he found himself slipping into the water and just letting go. And when he came to, he felt sort of the water lapping around his skin, and sort of could feel sort of something soft underneath him, and woke up really a bit startled. Oh my God, what's this, but couldn't believe also that he was floating on the surface of the water, and sort of could feel something underneath, and was quite shocked that this was something, God only knows what it was, but it was seeming something alive. And eventually, of course, he found out what this was. Guess what it was? It was a manta ray, like a big, huge skate, that is keeping him on the surface of the water. It was keeping him on the surface of the water. It stayed with him and swam him in toward the coast. Took quite some time to get in toward the coast, and eventually, of course, when he got in toward the coast, it was not that far away from it, and thought, oh my God, I'm so close now, let me swim, and started to swim toward the coast, and got about 300 or 400 yards off the coast, and again, through exhaustion and through dehydration from being at sea and having to continuously move, just could not believe that didn't have the energy, but found against slipping into the sea. Could not believe that got so far and this was to happen. And again, this manta ray came up underneath, floated this fellow, kept him on the surface, and swam with him in, to the surface, to the shore, to get closer to the shore. So this is a very remarkable story of how a species of life have reached out to connect and touch and care for another species. And it's amazing, because there's this elephant in Las Vegas, and this elephant's name is Mavis. And Mavis has the trainer who trains Mavis, and it's got this little box of sweets that's sort of in the marquee. The centre pole has this little flimsy little box which has all the sweets and things in it. And the trainer sort of trains her to do things and gives her a little reward with this sweet and that. And anyway, so Mavis is taken to seeing somebody walking past the marquee. She goes over, she wraps her trunk around that person. You can imagine that's happened to you. Picks you up, sort of brings you over and plonks you down by the side of the centre of the marquee where this sweet box is, and then does sort of a little sort of a motion with the trunk like this, and then pausing ever so gently, at the sweet box, and again doing this sort of another with her trunk, and then again just sort of pausing ever so gently at the sweet box. Of course, if you've got any sense about you, my God, the elephant sort of wants something out of the sweet box or this box. Well, you can imagine actually first that this has happened to you, and you can imagine the absolute fright of having such an enormous animal really wrap its trunk around you. When you know a couple of things, you know that Mavis is very, very strong, but you also sense her gentleness. So anyway, so this one day, this woman's walking past the marquee, and Mavis sees her, rushes over and reaches out and grabs her around her waist with the trunk, picks her up, brings her over and plonks her down beside the centre of the marquee, and does this sort of a little number, with the trunk, pausing ever so gently at the sweet box like this, doing sort of a little bit of a number, pausing ever so gently at the sweet box, and this woman sort of notices, oh my God, look, the elephants are needing something or want something from this box, and reaches up to open up the box, of course, and the key's missing. The key's missing. So when Mavis is sort of doing one of these numbers a little bit, this person just sort of feels a way to the exit, don't want to rush because you don't want to excite the chase instinct, of the elephant. It's sort of like moving briskly toward the centre at the exit. And just upon approaching the exit, she feels this force looming like this, oh my God, and she turns around like this, and looks up like, and here's Mavis, drop the key. Mavis dropped the key. So I hope that this is like a key, that we ever are aware of the importance of animals, that animals do communicate to each other, very much part of our environment, and that you can make some healthy choices in your choice of food that can help the earth and all of us have a sustainable future. I hope you loved this show today. I look forward to seeing you back here.